All right, ready to dive deep. Today, we're looking closer at Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman, yeah.
I mean, we know her, right? Moses of her people, Underground Railroad, the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The iconic image.
But there's so much more to her, so many layers we often miss.
It's like, seeing a familiar picture, but with a whole new light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing today. We've got her Wikipedia page, good starting point.
Sure.
But also this article, fascinating, highlights 6 other women,
Oh, wow.
crucial to the abolition movement, but names we might not recognize.
That's what's so cool about history, It's not just the big names, it's the whole network.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our mission, unearth those hidden gems about Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
What drove her? What did she overcome? How did her influence go way beyond the Underground Railroad?
Love it. And her story, it begins with real hardship. Araminta Minty Ross, born into slavery around 1822, Maryland. And her early life marked by a brutal incident.
Yeah, that's what got me, reading about that young girl hit in the head, a heavy weight meant for another enslaved person.
It's hard to even imagine.
The impact, not just physically, but mentally.
Yeah, most
Right.
right, sure.
Not just a bump, a serious injury.
Mhm.
Lifelong seizures, awful headaches, sudden sleep spells.
Like, from the start, her existence was about resilience.
It really was.
But amidst it all, she found solace in her faith. Deeply religious, she saw her vivid dreams, maybe from the injury, as messages from God.
It's amazing how she drew strength from that. That adversity, she found meaning, purpose.
Now, we know, 1849, she escaped slavery, gets to Philadelphia, but she went back,
She did.
risked her freedom again and again, helping her family, dozens of others, escape to the north.
That's where Moses takes on that deeper meaning.
It's not just leading, it's that unwavering faith, the unimaginable courage to face danger over and over.
Exactly.
And she wasn't passive about it. There's this detail, she carried a revolver.
Not just for slave catchers, but to make sure no one panicked, jeopardized the whole mission.
The weight of that responsibility. She's petite, dangerous terrain, armed, lives depending on her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, that whole $40,000 bounty thing, probably exaggerated.
Really?
Rewards were offered, but likely much less. The point is, it wasn't money that stopped slave catchers. It was her sheer ingenuity.
Right.
Disguises, moving at night, a network of safe houses, like a spy thriller, almost.
It really is.
So we've got Tubman, stealthy conductor on the Underground Railroad. But then her story takes this turn. She wasn't just about covert stuff. She was deep with John Brown, the abolitionist, believed in armed resistance.
John Brown, yeah. And her involvement went way beyond safe passage. Planning, strategy, recruiting for that 1859 raid on Harper's Ferry.
Big shift from covert to more militant.
For sure.
And Brown's execution must have hit her hard.
Oh, absolutely. Solidified her belief that peaceful wasn't always enough. Turning point, fueled her commitment, even as the nation's on the edge of civil war.
Which leads to another overlooked part. Her role in the Civil War itself. Not just the railroad anymore. New responsibilities, skills, knowledge, all for the Union Army.
This is where she steps into roles typically for men. Cook, nurse, even a spy. Using her knowledge of the land, her ability to move unseen to gather intelligence.
Talk about valuable. And then there's the Combahee River Raid,
Mhm.
1863. Not just individuals escaping anymore. Full-blown military operation.
That's right. Over 700 enslaved people liberated.
Led Union soldiers up the Combahee, using her waterway expertise to bypass defenses. Strategic masterpiece. First woman to lead an armed military operation in U.S. history.
It's incredible, isn't it?
A woman born into slavery, orchestrating an operation that strikes at the very heart of that institution. Her story, sometimes it's hard to believe.
I know. But even after the war, her commitment to justice never wavered. Auburn, New York, she settles there, but continues advocating for equality, for Black Americans, for women.
And that's a whole other chapter, definitely worth its own dive. But before we go there, something struck me while reading. Harriet Tubman, despite all this courage, achievements, still faced tremendous hardship.
That's an important point.
Constant battle with poverty, working tirelessly to make ends meet while dedicating her life to helping others. Really challenges what hero means, doesn't it?
It does, so let's keep that in mind. As we celebrate her accomplishments, remember, her story, like so many others who fought for freedom, is about struggle and resilience. Welcome back to our deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about Harriet Tubman's incredible work during the Civil War. But her story, like we've been saying, it's so much more than just those big moments.
Right. It's like each layer we uncover, there's something new and surprising about her.
Yeah.
Like her life after the war, Auburn, New York.
Yeah.
Not just settling down, it became this hub for her, for family, anyone looking for a better life, really.
It's amazing how she built this community, a refuge, a place of support, especially for those who had escaped slavery too. Her home was a haven, and it really shows her generosity.
Speaking of which, there's this thing about her adopted daughter, Margaret. Sources mention some mystery around her background.
Huh?
At first, thought to be Tubman's niece, but new research suggests maybe not the whole story.
Interesting.
Seems Margaret was actually the daughter of a free black couple, neighbors to Tubman's parents back in Maryland. Why Tubman presented her as her niece, still debated. But it reminds us, even with figures as well-known as Tubman, there are complexities we might never fully grasp.
That's true.
Makes you think about the choices she had to make, burdens she carried, even while fighting for others' freedom. But clear is she wanted a better life for Margaret. It says a lot about her character.
Definitely. It speaks to her empathy, her dedication to family, both blood and chosen, always opening her doors, sharing what little she had.
Which is even more remarkable considering she was never financially secure herself. The sources paint this picture of her constantly struggling, even while being hailed as a hero.
A stark contrast, isn't it? Risking her life for others, serving in the war, yet often living in poverty. Freedom doesn't automatically equal equality or economic security.
So true. It highlights those systemic challenges that persisted, even after slavery was abolished. And the irony, given her passionate advocacy for women's suffrage.
Yeah.
Fighting for others' rights, but couldn't even vote herself.
It's incredible. And she was actively involved, not just symbolic, meetings, working with Susan B. Anthony, traveling, sharing her story, pushing for women's equality. There's even this quote, when asked if women should vote, she said, "I suffered enough to believe it."
Powerful. You can hear the weight of her experiences in those words. And to think she was doing all this while facing financial hardship. There's a story about her selling her cow just to afford a train ticket to a suffrage convention.
Wow. Really shows the unseen struggles of those who dedicate themselves to fighting for others. They deserve recognition, yes, but also support. Their sacrifices shouldn't be taken lightly.
Absolutely. And Tubman's activism wasn't just suffrage. She was all about improving her community's life, especially elderly African Americans, who often faced neglect and discrimination.
Right, which led her to establish the Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged in Auburn.
Exactly. Vision of a society that cared for its most vulnerable, dignity and respect for everyone, regardless of age or circumstance.
Absolutely.
But creating this home wasn't easy. Constant financial hurdles, even putting up her own property as collateral, shows how much she believed in it.
Another example of her resourcefulness, that resilience, never letting obstacles stop her, especially when helping others.
But even with all that strength, age and illness took their toll.
Yeah.
That head injury from her childhood, remember?
Of course. Pain, sleeplessness throughout her life, even accounts of her having skull surgery, without anesthesia, biting down on a bullet instead.
It's almost unbelievable the endurance she had.
It is. And in her final years, her health declined. She was admitted to the very home she built. Surrounded by her community, she passed away March 10th, 1913. But her legacy, like we've been exploring, goes way beyond her lifetime.
No doubt. And that brings up something important. We've been focused on Harriet Tubman, rightly so, but her story also reminds us she wasn't alone in this fight. Countless others contributed to abolition, often behind the scenes, risking everything for freedom.
You're talking about that article, The Six Forgotten Women.
Yes. Remembering those names, recognizing the collective effort is crucial. Like Caroline Still Anderson, running a major underground railroad station right in her Philadelphia home.
Incredible. And not just shelter. She documented those escape stories, preserving those voices. Invaluable resource for historians today.
Then there's Marianne Shadd Cary, dedicated to education and empowerment. Newspapers and schools for Black refugees believing knowledge was key to true freedom.
Vital work, creating community, belonging for those who had been displaced. She understood true freedom wasn't just escaping. It was about opportunities, social and economic advancement.
The ripple effect of their actions is amazing.
Yeah.
Their courage shaping history.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, who are the other unsung heroes out there? Whose stories are waiting to be told?
Great question. One we'll keep exploring as we look at the lasting impact of Harriet Tubman's life, how she's remembered as a true American icon in our final part.
Welcome back. It's wild, even after all this time diving into Harriet Tubman's life, there's still this, awe.
Yeah.
It just hits you how much she did in a time when everything was against her.
It's true. What's amazing is how her story still resonates today,
For sure.
This symbol of resilience, fighting for what's right no matter what, it's a message that goes beyond time, inspires people everywhere.
And you see that in how she's honored, right? Schools, streets, statues, even a Coast Guard cutter named after her.
And of course, the push to put her on the $20 bill.
Oh, right.
Imagine her face on our currency, a constant reminder of her legacy, what she stood for.
It'd be incredible. But even beyond those things, it's that intangible impact that's really something. That spirit of resistance, hope, the idea that we can change things.
It's like her story gives us permission to believe we can make a difference, too, even when things seem impossible, that we can push for progress, even when the way forward is uncertain.
And that feels really relevant today, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Still dealing with social justice, racial inequality, these systemic barriers that feel so deep-rooted.
Yeah, and that's why I think her story holds such power. It's a reminder that this fight for freedom, for equality, it's a long game, like a relay race. Each generation picks up the torch and carries it forward.
And that brings us back to those 6 women we talked about. Those often forgotten figures who were so vital to the movement. Caroline Still Anderson, documenting those escape stories, preserving those voices. Marianne Shadd Carey, building schools, newspapers, recognizing how powerful education can be.
It's like their stories, alongside Tubman's, they paint this picture, a collective struggle. This network of people, their courage, compassion, their commitment, they helped move history towards justice.
It reminds you that movements are rarely about one person, no matter how amazing they are. It's about everyday people, facing incredible hardships, coming together for something bigger than themselves.
And I think that's powerful for our listeners, as we think about Harriet Tubman's life. Ask yourself, who are those unsung heroes in your community in our time?
Right.
What can we learn from them, their struggles, their wins? How can we apply those lessons to the challenges we face today?
Yeah, how can we, each of us, contribute to making a more just and equitable world?
Those are the questions I hope stick with you, even after this deep dive ends. Because Harriet Tubman's legacy, it's not just about remembering the past, it's about using her story to inspire us, to take action, to create a future that reflects what she fought for.
I understood it better myself. And on that note, we'll leave you with those thoughts. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the amazing life and lasting legacy of Harriet Tubman, a true American icon.